So here we are, my review of the very first Steven Spielberg film. Duel. Duel was released in 1971 and is the very first film to be directed by Steven Spielberg. So before Jaws, before Close Encounters, before E.T., before Indiana Jones, he did this film. He made this little film called Duel, which was originally a TV movie, but over time it's actually been released on DVD and has become increasingly popular. As you know, Spielberg has become increasingly popular. You know, people have been going back and looking at his earlier filmography and looking back at a little film called Duel, which is originally a TV movie released in 1971. However, now it is actually released on DVD and is actually considered among some of Spielberg's best films. But what do I think about it? So, Duel was released in 1971 and stars Dennis Weaver. Basically, the plot of the film is actually quite simple. Basically, it's a road rage film like none other. We follow David Mann, played by Dennis Weaver, who's in this car. He's on his way to an appointment. He's on a tight time schedule. And basically, on the road, when he passes his gas truck, the gas truck driver gets very, very angry. And basically, what we get for the rest of the film, basically what we get for the next 90 minutes is this gas truck trying to ram down, trying to kill David Mann in his car on his way to his appointment. But it's not just this cat and mouse chase, because there's a lot more to it. There's a bunch of scenes thrown in there which aren't really about this gas truck driver trying to kill David Mann in his car. There's a lot of other scenes in there. For example, there's this whole bar scene. He could be looking at any of the people who are trying to kill him in this gas truck and he doesn't know who, and he accuses the wrong truck driver, and that's a very interesting scene. At the same time, you also have the scene involving a school bus at one stage. Loads of scenes where you just see the gas truck all waiting for David Mann in his car to move, or where the gas truck is literally about to kill David Mann in his car. You know, like I said, it's a road rage like none other because it's so much more than a road rage, and also for the fact that we never actually get to see the person who's driving the gas truck. We never get to see essentially the main antagonist of the film. Essentially, the main antagonist of the film is this gas truck. We never see the person driving the gas truck, so the main antagonist of the film is a gas truck. And it's actually really clever when you think about it, and at the same time so unique and so distinctive. And it's an absolutely fantastic film because it's intense, ripping, and for a film that was made in 1971, this felt like a film that was made in the 80s or 90s. For Spielberg's very first film, it's better than most films made nowadays. Like I said, what works for on another level is the fact that we never get to see the gas truck driver, which still amazed me when I said that out loud. We never actually get to see the main antagonist in the film, and that leads the main antagonist in the film to be this gas truck. Like Jaws, where the antagonist of the film is a shark, the antagonist of this film is a gas truck. It's still so fantastic because it's such a simple plot, but like E.T., Spielberg made this in so much more than just a simple film. Through his direction, through fantastic editing of the film, and through the way this film is structured and the way it's shot. It's fantastic to watch, considering this is Spielberg's very first film as well. It's actually fantastic, but I'm not gonna lie, it isn't a perfect film. I wouldn't even say it's one of Spielberg's best films in my opinion. One of the things that I would criticise about the film is simply the fact this film was made in 1971. And even though I did say it felt like an 80s or 90s film, it also felt like an 80s or 90s film. You know what I mean? There are some parts of the film that are a bit outdated, I must admit. For example, there's quite a few scenes in the film where you'll hear David Mann talking to himself in his head. You'll hear the dialogue from Dennis Weaver as David Mann, you know, talking to himself in his head. And at the same time, you know, he might say something out loud and it sounds exactly the same. You know, the voice in his head, as well as saying it out loud, it just sounds exactly the same. It'll be a bit confusing sometimes whether he's saying his voice in his head, whether he's saying what he's saying in his head, or whether he's saying it out loud. And it's a bit outdated, and it took a bit of time for me to get over that, and it wasn't particularly, you know, well polished in my opinion, that whole side of it. And also, this film doesn't really have a playback quality. You can't really watch this film more than once, especially straight away, because you kind of know where the film is going to end up. You know how the film ends, you know where certain scenes, certain intense scenes in the film ends. It doesn't have that same effect when you watch this, you know, more than once, I must admit. Watching it the first time is absolutely fantastic. You'll be in shock at how good this film is the first time, because you really don't know what you're going in for. But then a second time, you kind of know. And if you are going to watch it a second time, I would say you leave a gap between both watch-throughs. Don't watch it straight away. Unlike some other Spielberg films, which I think if you watch straight away, you actually, you know, maybe enjoy it a bit more. Unlike some of Spielberg's later films, if you watch this again, I don't feel it have that same effect that it had the first time. And to be honest, I like films with a playback quality that you can watch, you know, time and time again, and it still has that same effect on you, or maybe a different effect, which is just as good. But I'm afraid Duel won't have that. It's still got a good effect the first time you watch it, but then the playback quality, you know how certain scenes end, certain very intense scenes end. Kind of know how it all ends up, and it doesn't have that same effect. Other than that though, I think it's an absolutely fantastic film, especially considering this is Spielberg's very first film, and there's so many intense sequences in the film. Kind of like a blueprint for Jaws. Like, there's so many intense sequences in Jaws, and even The Struggling Express, which actually has some very, very big similarities to this film. I feel like this film is kind of like a blueprint for Struggling Express, which was a Spielberg film that he did after this, and Jaws. And I don't think without this film that those, Shogun Express and Jaws would be as intense as they were in some certain stages of those films. Because I think this film, it really plays on those intense sequences, because they're actually quite relatable when you think about it. There's this whole sequence where basically David Mann is waiting for the train to go past on the road, he's just waiting for the train to go past, and the gas truck just comes up behind him and tries to ram him in this train, and he could die if he doesn't get away from the train in time, and basically this train is going, really fast, and this gas truck is trying to ram into the train, and if he goes into the train, David Mann's car could get flattened, or he could get flung all over the place, and he could die, and it's such a really relatable sequence, but at the same time, it's so intense, and that's like one of the sequences of the film that works so well, and the scenes like that in his later films, like Shogun Express and Jaws, which is after this, which are kind of similar, relatable, but intense sequences. Just before I talk about the film and some of the road rage sequences are absolutely fantastic, just say I'm not a fan of car films, by the way. I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm not really a fan of films to do with cars. I mean, I liked Ford v Ferrari, but I liked Ford v Ferrari for a different reason. But the thing is, I'm not really a fan of car films. I'm not a fan of Fast and Furious. I've never really got into that franchise, and I probably never will, to be honest. I'm not really a fan of car films. So when I sat down to watch this film, initially I was a bit skeptical. I watched the film about 5, 6, 7 years ago now, and I remember when I sat down to watch it because I heard it was a car film. I wasn't really that interested. I just remember my parents coming through one day and saying, "Now you're gonna watch Duel," and that was really it. And then when I sat down to watch it, I was amazed by it, and I didn't know it was a Spielberg film to the end of the film, which was even more of a treat. Like, I was watching the film thinking, "Oh, it's actually fantastic." Yeah, it wasn't directed by a famous person. Got to the end of the film, directed by Steven Spielberg. I was just a bit like, "Of course it is." But yeah, I wasn't really. I'm not really a fan of car films, and so when I'm not really a fan of films to be road rage or anything like that. But the thing is, this film has so many intense sequences involving this car with David Mann and this gas truck that are so intense that I didn't expect the film to make me feel as intense, and it did in those sequences. It's so fantastic to watch. It really is. It's like there's so many intense sequences. There's just this car and this truck which are so fantastic. Like two moments in particular which stuck out to me where the truck is just waiting for the car. The distance, like one moment in particular, the truck is just waiting down at the end of this dark tunnel for David Mann and his car to move. And there's one sequence in particular where David Mann pulls off the side of the road and goes to sleep for about an hour or so. He wakes up and he sees the truck in the distance, and it's still waiting for him to move. And it's things like that in the film which is so fantastic. And also this whole bar scene, which I briefly mentioned earlier in this video, when David Mann is in his bar, he goes in his bar to relax his thoughts and try and get all his thoughts together about this gas truck. And he could be looking at any of the drivers of this gas truck, and we don't know because we never see the gas truck driver, so we don't know. And he could be looking at any of these gas truck drivers. He actually accuses the wrong truck driver, and basically they get in a fight, and then the actual truck driver gets in the gas truck, and the gas truck starts driving away, and David Mann goes, chasing after that gas truck to try and catch up with it. And it's just scenes like that in the film, which are so fantastic and so intense, but at the same time, so real and relatable. I actually think this is an absolutely fantastic film. Even so, it is a bit outdated now, considering it's Spielberg's very first film, though, and even so, it didn't really have much of a fantastic playback quality. I still think it's a damn good film, especially on a first watch. And the third act of the film, it's like the big payoff. Like, you have all these intense sequences leading up to what's going to happen at the end with these two cars, essentially, because this car and this truck are essentially two different cars, which is a bit weird to say, but what's going to happen to these two cars at the end of the film. And the third act of the film is just so brilliant. It has a fantastic ending, Mike, and I think Spielberg pulled it out at the end with this film. He really did. I think this film has got an absolutely fantastic third act that was a big payoff, and at the same time, just as intense as some of the many other sequences in this film. Performance from Dennis Weaver is absolutely fantastic in the film. You really believe that his character going mad over this gas truck. He's fantastic in the film. And ultimately, I think Duel is a very good film. Not Spielberg's best, but I think it's very good. For that reason, I'm going to give it about an 8.1 out of 10. That's not to say it's bad in any way. I've rated a lot of Spielberg films recently, around 8 or 9 out of 10. I've rated a lot of them around that sort of level. And the thing is with this film, it's good, it's really good, just it's not as good as in the second watch. And when I sat down to watch this the other night, the first time in a long while, because I hadn't really seen this the first time I saw it initially, back like 5, 6, 7 years ago now, I knew certain moments of the film, and it didn't have the same effect it did the first time. It's still good to watch. The second watch, it just doesn't have that same effect. So on the first watch, I can assure you now, you will not be disappointed. It is an absolutely fantastic film. And for Steven Spielberg's very first film, I think it's fantastic. And by the way, side note, you might be wondering why I didn't actually review this as my first Spielberg review on this channel. Basically, I actually realised I had it on DVD. So I reviewed the Shogun Express first, which is his second film. And, I didn't get around to reviewing this film, but yeah, I'm happy that I did though, because it's worth reviewing and it's worth watching. And for that reason, I'm going to give Duel an 8.1 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Steven Spielberg's very first film, Duel? Do you love it, do you hate it, or have you just not watched it? And if not, why not? Please do comment below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And just to say, once again, I'm still watching and reviewing a handful of Spielberg films right now. So look forward to my next Spielberg film review, which I haven't decided what it's going to be, but look forward to my next Spielberg film review coming very, very soon on this channel. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more, both film and TVs and Spielberg film reviews coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now, bye!